3,601 meters down, in one of the most remote trenches on Earth, a robotic floodlight sweeps across something that shouldn't exist. A sponge covered in hooks. Small, round, and pale white, sitting motionless on a stalk in the permanent dark. Scientists nicknamed it the Death Ball, and in October 2025, it became one of 30 entirely new species confirmed from the depths of the Southern Ocean. This is the story of that discovery and the strange, mostly hidden world of sponges that gave up filtering water and started catching live prey instead. No diver has ever seen one of these alive. At this depth, only a robot can get close enough to look. Welcome back to the Abyss Report. The Death Ball sponge surfaced on camera during a dive by the ROV Sebastian, working from the research vessel Falcor 2. The dive site sat in a trench east of Montague Island in the South Sandwich Islands, one of the most remote and least explored stretches of ocean on the planet. At 3,600 meters, sunlight has never once reached the seafloor. Pressure here is immense, enough to crush an unprotected structure in an instant. This is where the sponge was living quietly, entirely unknown to science, until a robotic spotlight swept across it for the first time. On a map, the whole dive site is barely a dot, a single trench along a remote island chain most people have never heard of. It's one of the most remote research sites on the planet, closer to Antarctica than to any inhabited coastline. Almost every sponge on Earth feeds the same way. Water gets pumped through a network of internal channels, and specialized cells filter out bacteria and tiny organic particles drifting past. It's a passive, gentle process. A sponge just sits there and lets the ocean feed it. The Death Ball sponge doesn't do any of that. It belongs to a family called Cladorhizidae, carnivorous sponges that abandoned filter feeding altogether. Scientists believe this transition to carnivory happened only once in one ancestral lineage and then spread into roughly 200 distinct species. It's a genuinely recent discovery in scientific terms. Researchers only confirmed that any sponge could be carnivorous at all in the mid-1990s. Where a typical sponge is soft and porous, the death ball's body is covered in tiny, hard, hook-shaped structures called spicules. Researchers have described the effect as something close to Velcro. Small crustaceans drifting past in the current brush against the sponge's spherical body and simply get snagged. No chase, no strike, no venom. It's an entirely passive trap. The sponge doesn't need to move at all. It just needs to wait in the current long enough for something small enough and unlucky enough to drift into its hooks. Studies on related species show the most common victims are tiny crustaceans, generally no longer than 8 millimeters, barely visible without a macro lens. Once prey is caught, the sponge's own cells begin migrating toward it, slowly moving from across its entire body to concentrate directly around the trapped animal. Over the following hours, the sponge secretes a thin membrane around its catch, sealing it in place. Digestion happens outside the sponge's own tissue first, breaking the prey down externally before specialized cells called archaeocytes absorb the fragments. There's no stomach here, no mouth in the way most animals have one, just cells doing the work of digestion directly against whatever's been caught. In related species observed in aquariums, prey can be fully engulfed by sponge cells in just a few hours, remarkably fast for an animal with no muscles and no nervous system at all. To understand why any sponge would give up filter feeding, you have to understand where it lives. The deep sea is olidrophic, a scientific way of saying nutrient-starved. Organic material raining down from the sunlit surface thins out dramatically the deeper you go. And by 3,000 meters down, there's often barely enough drifting food to sustain a filter feeder at all. Trapping and eating whole animals, even tiny ones, delivers far more energy per catch than filtering water ever could. Some researchers suspect these sponges may even use faint bioluminescent chemistry to help lure prey closer in total darkness, though that particular theory is still being tested. The death ball isn't the only strange design in this family. Its close relative, the harp sponge, grows in vertical branches shaped almost exactly like the strings of the instrument it's named for, discovered off the coast of California in 2012. Each branch ends in a small swollen ball, used not for feeding, but for reproduction, releasing packets of sperm into the current. Another relative, nicknamed the ping-pong tree sponge, grows small round spheres on thin stalks that look almost exactly like a cluster of ping-pong balls suspended on twigs. A close cousin, Chondrocladia lampadiglobus, literally lamp globe, grows a single glowing-looking sphere at the very top of its stalk, like a lantern nobody ever lit. Roughly 150 to 200 species in this family have been formally described so far, and researchers suspect there are many more still waiting in the dark. The deathball sponge was one of 30 entirely new species confirmed from 2 research expeditions carried out in 2025, led by the Nippon Foundation Nekton Ocean Census in partnership with the Schmidt Ocean Institute. The team collected close to 2,000 physical specimens across 14 different animal groups, alongside thousands of high-definition images and hours of video footage. In the same expedition, researchers also filmed armored scale worms that glow faintly blue, and bizarre zombie worms which have no mouth or gut at all, surviving instead on bacteria that digest fat from whale bones. The very same expedition also recorded the first ever confirmed footage of a living juvenile colossal squid, making this one of the most productive deep-sea research trips in recent memory. By the end of the expedition, the team had confirmed 30 new species total, and they'd only finished analyzing a fraction of everything they collected. The specimens were formally verified at a species discovery workshop in Punta Arenas, Chile, in August of 2025, the final scientific checkpoint before a discovery counts as confirmed. Right now, the deathball sponge doesn't have an official species name. Scientists are calling it Chondrocladia species nova, Latin for new species, a placeholder used while formal taxonomic description is still underway. That process involves comparing the specimen against every known relative, documenting its unique physical structure in painstaking detail, and eventually publishing a formal description in a peer-reviewed journal. Only then does a new species get the permanent scientific name it will carry forever. For now, this predator remains defined mostly by what makes it different: a sphere covered in hooks, sitting in the dark, waiting. Some newly discovered deep-sea species wait years, even decades, for a full, formal description. Others never get one at all, simply for lack of researchers and funding to do the work. 3,600 meters down, in permanent darkness, a sponge sits perfectly still, covered in hooks, waiting for something small to drift close enough. It isn't rare because it's dangerous. It isn't famous because it's large. It's remarkable simply because, until October 2025, nobody knew it existed at all. Subscribe to the Abyss Report. We go back down next week. See you in the deep.